Welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at some fascinating research on how our choices are influenced, and more importantly, how we can use that knowledge to make smarter decisions.
It's funny. We like to think of ourselves as rational beings, but so often our choices are shaped by factors that we're not even aware of.
Yeah, I've always been fascinated by behavioral economics.
Yeah.
You know how it challenges that classic economic idea of the perfectly rational human.
Right. Behavioral economics reminds us that we're not just calculating machines, we're humans. We've got emotions, we have biases, we took these mental shortcuts, and sometimes they lead us in the wrong direction.
And one of the coolest examples I saw of this was that coffee table illusion.
Oh, yeah, the two tables that are the same size,
Yeah.
but one looks longer and narrower. It just shows you how easily our intuition can be fooled.
Totally. It's like our brain is playing tricks on us.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how many times that happens in everyday life, you know?
Well, all the time. Actually, think about how information is presented to us.
Hmm.
When we buy things, how things are arranged in the store, the way choices are presented to us when we're investing or even choosing a health plan, it all matters.
It really does. That makes me think about all these cognitive biases that trip us up, like that availability heuristic that we were reading about.
Yeah.
Like after you hear about a plane crash and suddenly you're afraid to fly, even though it's statistically safer.
Right. It's that tendency to overestimate the likelihood of events that are easily
Right.
recalled
Okay.
because they're vivid or dramatic.
Yeah, plane crash is definitely dramatic.
Exactly. So it sticks in your mind and makes it feel more likely, even if it's actually pretty rare.
It's like our brains are wired for those sensational headlines instead of, the real statistics.
We go with what's readily available in our memory, not necessarily what's statistically probable.
Makes sense. Now, representativeness was another bias that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Like judging probability based on how well something matches a stereotype.
Yeah, like that classic experiment where people are given descriptions of individuals and asked to guess their professions. And even when you give them statistically improbable scenarios, they cling to those stereotypes.
It's like our brains are trying to shove everything into these neat little categories, even when the real world is so much messier.
Right. Our minds love patterns even when they don't really exist.
So how do we overcome these biases then? How do we make smarter decisions?
Well, that's where choice architecture comes in.
Okay.
It's about designing environments that nudge people towards choices that are good for them.
So instead of trying to change human nature, we can work with it, design systems that play to our strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly. It's like designing a grocery store where the healthy food is at eye level. You're not forcing people to buy it,
Right.
but you're making it easier to choose.
So you're influencing their choice by how you present the options.
That's a good analogy. Let's talk about some real-world examples of this. Retirement savings is a big one for me. We all know we should be saving, but it's so easy to procrastinate.
It is, and one of the most successful nudges in this area is automatic enrollment in retirement savings plans. You make it the default option, so people have to opt out if they don't want to participate.
So you're basically flipping the script on procrastination.
Exactly. And studies show that it works. Participation rates go way up. It's a simple change with a big impact.
That's incredible. I'm starting to see how these little tweaks to our environment can really make a difference in people's lives. It's like you're gently guiding them towards a better path without taking away their freedom of choice.
That's the idea. Choice architecture is all about giving people a nudge in the right direction.
I like it. What about investing? That's another area that can feel really intimidating for people, especially if they don't know much about the financial markets. Yeah, investing can seem complicated, but it doesn't have to be. Choice architecture can help here too. Think about offering a well-designed default investment portfolio instead of making people choose individual stocks or bonds.
Right, which can be overwhelming.
You give them a ready-made portfolio that matches their risk tolerance and their goals.
That's smart. It's like those meal kits you get delivered. All the ingredients are already prepped and measured out.
It takes the guesswork out of it.
And you can just get started.
And start building your financial future.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about mortgages. It's not the most glamorous topic, but it's a huge financial decision and it can be super complicated.
It is. Mortgages are full of paperwork and jargon, and it's easy to get lost in the details. This is where choice architecture can really help empower borrowers.
So how do we make choosing a mortgage less confusing and scary?
Well, one idea is to implement something called a mortgage recap. A recap. Yeah, similar to the credit card recap we talked about before, where all the costs associated with the credit card are laid out in a clear and standardized format.
So no more hidden fees or confusing terms and conditions.
Exactly. A mortgage recap would give borrowers a clear picture of all the costs involved. Interest rates, fees, repayment terms, all presented in a way that's easy to compare.
That would be a game changer.
Yeah.
It would help people make informed decisions and avoid those predatory loans that can trap them in debt.
Right. It would make the whole mortgage market more transparent and consumer friendly.
Now let's talk about something that's especially relevant to young people's student loans. It's a huge issue with so many students graduating with mountains of debt.
It is a big problem, and just like with mortgages, choice architecture can help make the process of choosing and managing those loans more transparent and manageable.
So we could apply that recap concept to student loans as well.
Absolutely. Imagine a world where students and their families could easily compare different loan options side by side with all the costs clearly laid out, interest rates, fees, repayment terms, the whole 9 yards.
It would be like having a financial roadmap for their education, helping them make smart decisions about their future.
Exactly. It would empower borrowers and encourage lenders to offer more competitive terms.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to a topic that's often surrounded by a lot of emotion organ donation.
This is an area where choice architecture has the potential to save countless lives, but it also requires really careful consideration of the ethical implications.
Absolutely. One of the most debated nudges in this area is shifting the default to presumed consent. Instead of having to opt in to be an organ donor, you would be automatically enrolled unless you specifically opt out.
Right. And this approach has been shown to dramatically increase organ donation rates in countries where it's been implemented. But it's crucial to make sure that people are fully informed about the system and they have the freedom to make their own choice.
So transparency and respect for individual autonomy are really important here.
Absolutely. It's not about coercing people into donating. It's about making it easier for those who are willing to do so and making sure everyone understands the choices that are available to them.
Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about an area where nudges can have a huge impact on our collective well-being, the environment.
Yes, protecting the environment requires both individual and collective action, and behavioral economics can offer valuable insights into how to encourage more sustainable behavior.
For example, I've read about how those smart meters that show you your energy consumption in real time can be really effective at getting people to conserve energy.
Right, by making the invisible visible. You make people more aware of their impact. And by highlighting social norms, you can further nudge people in the right direction. Like those signs in hotels that say most guests reuse their towels.
Oh yeah, it makes you want to do the same thing.
Exactly. We're social creatures. We tend to follow the crowd.
Okay, now let's dive into a topic that's near and dear to my heart, education. It's the foundation for so much in life, and I'm always looking for ways to improve the learning experience.
Education is a great area for nudges. One area where they can be particularly helpful is in school choice. Choosing the right school for your child can be so overwhelming. There's just so much information to process.
It's like a maze of test scores, rankings, curriculum options.
Exactly. Choice architecture can help simplify that process. Imagine a system where parents can easily compare different schools side by side, based on the factors that matter most to them.
Without having to wade through mountains of paperwork or try to figure out these complicated websites.
Right. It would empower parents to make informed decisions, and it could help to level the playing field, making sure that all families have access to quality education.
Okay, now let's talk about another area where nudges can make a big difference, healthcare. It's a complex system that can be confusing and overwhelming for patients.
Definitely. And one of the most promising applications of nudges in healthcare is in the realm of insurance plan selection. Choosing the right health insurance plan can be a real headache.
Well, tell me about it. With all those deductibles and copays and coverage options, it's enough to make your head spin.
Right, and that's why so many people end up choosing plans that aren't really a good fit for their needs.
Either they're overpaying for coverage they don't need, or they end up with not enough coverage when they do get sick.
Exactly.
So how do we make choosing a health insurance plan easier and more personalized?
Well, one idea is to use intelligent assignment algorithms that recommend the most appropriate and cost-effective plan, based on an individual's health status, their medical needs, and their financial situation.
So it's like having a personalized health insurance concierge.
Yeah, exactly.
Guiding you through the maze of options.
Making sure you get the coverage you need without breaking the bank.
That makes a lot of sense. Now let's shift gears again and talk about something that's often overlooked, but really important: charitable giving. Even when people want to give, they often face barriers.
It's true. Charitable giving is another area where nudges can make a big difference, both in terms of increasing donations and making the process more streamlined.
One simple but effective nudge is just making it easier to donate. Like imagine if you could donate to your favorite charity with just a click or a swipe.
Right. No more filling out those long forms. And we can also leverage the power of defaults, like automatically opting people into a charitable giving program unless they choose to opt out.
So you're making generosity the default option.
Exactly.
I like it.
Making it easier for people to do good. Now let's get a little more creative and talk about some of the more controversial applications of nudges, starting with a topic that's always up for debate: personal responsibility and self-control.
Ah, yes. The age-old struggle between our better angels and our not-so-better angels.
We all face that battle, and nudges can play a fascinating role in helping us make choices that align with our long-term goals and values.
I've read about this idea of self-nudging, where you design your own environment to help you resist temptation or achieve your goals.
Exactly like Odysseus tying himself to the mast,
Oh,
so he wouldn't be lured in by the sirens.
that's a good one.
Or setting up those apps that block distracting websites.
Right, you're basically becoming your own choice architect, setting yourself up for success.
Exactly. By anticipating our weaknesses, we can design systems that help us overcome them.
Like if you're prone to impulse purchases, you might set a rule where you have to wait 24 hours before buying anything over a certain amount.
That's a good one.
Or if you're trying to eat healthier, you might clear out all the junk food from your pantry.
Right. It's all about creating an environment that supports your goals. Now, how about this, using technology to help us make better decisions in the heat of the moment?
I've heard about those emotional email filters that prevent you from sending those angry emails that you later regret.
Oh, yeah, those are interesting.
It's like having a little voice of reason that skips in and says, hold on a second. Maybe you should think about this before you hit send.
The software analyzes the tone and content of your email, looking for signs of strong emotions. And if it detects those red flags, it might delay the sending of the email or suggest that you revise it.
So it gives you a chance to cool down and let your rational brain take over.
Exactly. And it's just one example of how technology can be harnessed to nudge us toward better choices, even when our emotions are running high. But of course, this raises important ethical questions, too.
Absolutely. We need to make sure that these technologies are used responsibly and transparently, and that they empower individuals rather than controlling them. So we've explored a wide range of nudges today, from the everyday to the cutting edge. But the underlying theme here is that we're not always as rational as we think we are.
Right. Our choices are shaped by all these unconscious factors: social influences, the way information is presented, the subtle nudges we encounter in our environment. It's a complex interplay of forces.
It's like there's a whole hidden world operating beneath the surface of our conscious decisions.
And that's where choice architecture comes in. It gives us tools to design environments that make it easier to make choices that are good for us.
Both individually and collectively.
Exactly. It's about understanding human nature and using that knowledge to create a world where the easy choice is also the right choice.
It's almost like we're learning to hack our own decision-making processes, to create a world where we're more likely to make choices that lead to happiness and well-being and a more sustainable future.
I like that, hacking our decision-making for good. It's a fascinating field, and it's only getting more exciting as we learn more about how our minds work.
It really does feel like we're at the beginning of something big. Like
Right.
we're on the verge of a whole new era of understanding human behavior and using that knowledge to create a more thoughtful and humane world.
I think you're right. And the more we learn about these subtle influences, the more we can design systems and environments that support our best selves. And the more we learn about those subtle influences, the more we can design systems and environments that support our best selves.
I agree. It's all about using this knowledge for good.
Right.
But how do we make sure choice architecture isn't used to manipulate people? Where's the line?
That's the key question. Transparency is really important. People should know how choice architecture is being used and why. It's about empowering them, not tricking them.
Yeah, if you know that a store is putting the healthy snacks right by the checkout to encourage you to buy them,
Right.
well, then you can make a conscious decision about whether you want to indulge or not. But if you don't even realize they're doing that, it feels more like they're taking advantage of you.
Exactly. Transparency builds trust, and it lets people make informed choices. We also have to be careful about unintended consequences. You know, a default retirement savings plan might work well for most people, but what about folks with lower incomes or unpredictable jobs?
Good point. Those nudges might not work for everyone, Or they could even make things harder for some people.
Yeah.
We have to consider those different perspectives.
Absolutely. Choice architecture should be used to make a more equitable society, not to widen the gap between the haves and have-nots. It's something we have to be very mindful of.
It's a delicate balance, for sure. You know that example you mentioned earlier about the Seattle windshield pitting epidemic?
Oh, yeah.
That was fascinating. Just the suggestion that there was a problem led people to see damage that might have always been there.
It just shows how powerful social contagion can be. A little bit of anxiety can spread like wildfire and lead to all sorts of unnecessary actions and expenses.
It's like those marketing campaigns that tell you thousands of other people have already bought the product, so you should too.
Social proof at its finest. We're wired to follow the crowd, even if the crowd is heading in the wrong direction.
We look to others for cues about what to do and what to believe. It's part of being human.
It is, and that makes us vulnerable to nudges that tap into those social instincts. It's not just about designing environments, it's about understanding the social dynamics at play.
Okay, let's talk about some specific examples of how nudges can be used for good, starting with something we can all relate to, saving money.
Saving is one of those things that we know we should be doing, but it's so easy to put off. We tend to prioritize the immediate gratification.
The buy now button gets us every time.
It does. But there are ways to bridge that gap between our present selves and our future selves. And automatic enrollment in retirement savings plans is a great example of that.
By making saving the default option, you're basically helping people's future selves win that battle against instant gratification.
Right. You're removing the friction.
I like it.
Making it easier to do what's best in the long run. And this doesn't just apply to retirement savings either. You could do the same thing with emergency funds or college savings plans.
So make it automatic, and people are more likely to stick with it. That's a great insight. What about investing? That's another area where people can really benefit from a nudge.
Yeah, investing can seem intimidating, especially if you don't have a lot of financial knowledge. But it's so important for building long-term wealth, and choice architecture can make it a lot more approachable.
I've heard about these things called lifestyle funds, where instead of picking individual stocks and bonds, you just choose a fund that matches your overall investment strategy.
Yeah, exactly. Lifestyle funds are designed to take the guesswork out of investing.
Okay.
So you don't have to be a financial expert to make smart choices.
It's like having a personal financial advisor built into your investment plan.
Right. It simplifies the process and helps people stay invested for the long haul.
Okay, let's switch gears again and talk about something a little less exciting, but equally important: mortgages. One of the biggest financial decisions most people will ever make, and often one of the most confusing.
It is. Mortgages are complex. Lots of paperwork, lots of jargon, and it's easy to get lost in the details. That's why transparency is so important.
Yeah, it feels like you need a law degree to understand all the fine print.
That's why that idea of a mortgage recap is so appealing. Just give people clear and concise information about all the costs up front.
So they can compare different loans easily and make an informed decision.
Right, and it would also incentivize lenders to offer more transparent and consumer-friendly terms, because they'd know that borrowers are more savvy and aware of their options.
Speaking of transparency, let's talk about student loans. It's a topic that's weighing heavily on a lot of young people these days. The cost of education is skyrocketing, and student loan debt is a huge burden.
It is, and choice architecture can play a role here too. Just like with mortgages, we can use it to make the process of borrowing and repaying those loans more transparent and manageable.
So we're back to the idea of a student loan recap.
Exactly. Just lay out all the costs clearly: interest rates, fees, repayment options. Make it easy for students and families to compare different loans and choose the one that's right for them.
It would empower borrowers, and it would also encourage lenders to offer more competitive terms.
Right. Competition is a good thing. It drives innovation and benefits consumers.
Now let's move on to a topic that's a little more sensitive: organ donation. It's an area where nudges have the potential to save lives, but it also raises a lot of ethical questions.
It does. Organ donation is a complex issue, and choice architecture needs to be used very carefully here. We have to balance the potential benefits with the need to respect individual autonomy and informed consent.
So shifting the default to presumed consent might increase organ donation rates, but we have to make sure people understand the system and have the freedom to opt out if they want to.
Exactly. It's not about forcing people to donate. It's about making it easier for those who are willing to do so and ensuring that everyone is fully informed.
Now let's talk about an area where nudges can have a huge impact on our collective well-being: the environment.
Protecting the environment is essential for our future,
Yeah.
and nudges can be really effective at encouraging sustainable behavior. Think about those signs in hotels that encourage guests to reuse their towels.
Right.
Simple, but effective.
Or those smart meters that show you your energy consumption in real time.
Right, by making the invisible visible, you can nudge people toward more eco-friendly choices. And by highlighting social norms, you can amplify those efforts.
People are more likely to do something if they know it's the norm.
It's that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
We want to fit in.
Okay, let's shift gears and talk about education. It's so important for individual growth and societal progress. And I'm always fascinated by how we can use nudges to improve the learning experience.
Education is a great area to apply these principles. One area where choice architecture can be really helpful is in school choice.
Choosing the right school for your child can be so overwhelming.
It can be. So much information to sort through.
You've got test scores and rankings and curriculum options. It's like drinking from a fire hose.
Exactly. And choice architecture can help streamline that process, make it easier for parents to compare different schools based on the factors that are most important to them.
So they can make an informed decision that's right for their child.
Right. And it could also help to level the playing field, making sure that all families have access to quality educational options regardless of their background or resources.
Now let's talk about another area where nudges can make a big difference. Healthcare. It's a complex system, and patients often feel lost and overwhelmed.
Healthcare is complicated, and choice architecture can be used to empower patients and help them navigate that complexity more effectively.
Yeah, like choosing a health insurance plan can be a nightmare.
It can, with all those deductibles and prepays and different coverage options. It's no wonder people feel confused and frustrated, and they often end up with plans that aren't a good fit for their needs.
Yeah.
Either they're paying too much or they're not getting the coverage they need. So how do we fix this? Well, one promising approach is intelligent assignment. Using algorithms to recommend the most appropriate and cost-effective plan for each individual based on their health status, their medical needs, and their financial situation.
So it's like having a personalized healthcare advisor.
Yeah.
Helping you choose the plan that's right for you.
Exactly. It takes the guesswork out of it and empowers patients to make informed choices.
Okay, let's shift gears one last time and talk about charitable giving.
Okay.
It's so important for a healthy society.
It is. And nudges can help encourage more people to give and to give more effectively.
One of the easiest things we can do is just make it easier to donate. Reduce the friction. Make it a one-click process.
Right. Make it seamless.
Yeah.
And we can also use defaults to our advantage.
Okay.
Like automatically enrolling people in a charitable giving program,
Okay.
unless they specifically opt out.
So generosity becomes the default option.
Exactly. Now let's push the boundaries a little bit and talk about some more controversial applications of nudges, starting with personal responsibility and self-control.
Okay, those are big topics. How do nudges fit in there?
Well, we all struggle with temptation, right?
Yeah, the siren song of that extra cookie.
It's a daily battle. But nudges can help. We can actually nudge ourselves toward better behavior.
It's like being our own life coach.
Exactly. It's called self-nudging. You anticipate your weaknesses, and you design systems to help you overcome them.
Like if you're trying to break a bad habit, you might remove the temptation altogether.
Right out of sight, out of mind.
Or if you're trying to save money, you might set up automatic transfers to your savings account so the money is gone before you can even spend it.
Exactly. You're creating an environment that supports your goals. Now let's get really futuristic.
Okay.
How about using technology to help us make better decisions in the heat of the moment?
I've heard about those apps that can detect when you're about to send an angry email.
Oh yeah, the emotional email filters. That's a good one.
They analyze your tone, and if they sense you're about to go off the rails, they'll give you a warning or even delay the sending of the email.
It's like having a digital guardian angel on your shoulder.
Exactly, giving you a chance to cool down and reconsider. It's fascinating, but a little creepy too.
It is. It raises all sorts of ethical questions about privacy and control, but it also shows the potential of technology to help us make better choices, even when our emotions are running high.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
From retirement savings to organ donation to the environment to self-control, it's clear that nudges can be applied to a wide range of areas.
They can be. And the key takeaway here is that we're not always as rational as we think we are. Our choices are influenced by all sorts of unconscious factors.
Yeah, and by understanding those factors, we can start to design systems and environments that nudge us toward better outcomes.
Exactly. It's about working with human nature, not against it.
It's about creating a world where the easy choice is also the right choice.
A world where our best selves can thrive. A world where our best selves can thrive.
And as we learn more about how our minds work, we can design systems and environments that support those best selves. You know what really struck me throughout this conversation is just how interconnected everything is. Our choices are shaped by so many things, not just our own biases, but the social context, the way information is presented to us, the subtle nudges we encounter every day.
It's like a tapestry of influences. And understanding that tapestry is what allows us to create effective and ethical nudges.
Before we wrap up, I want to go back to something we talked about earlier, that idea of self-nudging. Taking control of our own choice architecture, designing our own environments to support our goals and our values.
Self-nudging, it's a powerful tool for personal growth. It's about acknowledging our weaknesses and being proactive about overcoming them.
Like if you're trying to break a bad habit, like spending too much time on social media, you could use one of those website blocker apps to limit your access during certain hours.
That's a good one. Or if you're trying to save money, you could set up an automatic transfer to your savings account every month.
So the money's out of sight, out of mind before you can even think about spending it.
Exactly. You're making the desired behavior the easy choice and the undesired behavior more difficult.
It's like we're building guardrails for our own decision-making,
It is.
guiding ourselves toward those choices that align with our long-term goals and our values.
And the more we understand our own biases, the more effectively we can design those self-nudges. It's like we're becoming our own life coach.
I love that, using behavioral economics to coach ourselves toward a more fulfilling and meaningful life.
And it's a journey of self-discovery. The more we experiment with different self-nudges, the more we learn about what works for us.
What works for one person might not work for another. It's all about finding what resonates with you.
It is. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
I like it. What is it?
Think about one area of your life where you want to make a positive change. It could be anything.
Saving more money, eating healthier, being more productive.
And then ask yourself, how can I use the principles we've talked about today to nudge myself in that direction?
Design your environment, set up those self-nudges, and see what happens.
Experiment and be patient. Even small changes can have a big impact over time.
It's all about those little tweaks and adjustments, those nudges that guide us toward a better version of ourselves.
And who knows, maybe those little nudges will ripple outwards, creating a more thoughtful and humane world for everyone.
That's a great thought to end on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep nudging yourselves toward a happier, healthier, and more fulfilling life.